If this message has found you, it is because the veil between the unseen and the seen has grown thin around your name, and something ancient, something patient, something written into the marrow of your becoming has finally been permitted to reach you. You did not stumble here by accident. You did not open this by chance. The algorithm is merely the messenger, but the sender is something older, something wiser, something that has been watching the ache in your chest with the tenderness of a mother watching a sleeping child. You have been carrying a silence that does not belong to you, and you have been trying to translate it in the language of rejection, when in truth it was never written in that language at all. Somewhere inside you, beneath the exhaustion and the second-guessing and the quiet weeping you have hidden even from yourself, a knowing has been trying to rise. A voice, soft but unshakable, that keeps whispering that this is not over. That voice is not delusion. That voice is not desperation dressed as hope. That voice is the deepest part of you, the part Jung called the self, recognizing what your surface mind cannot yet accept. You were led here because your intuition finally overpowered your fear long enough to search, to seek, to open one more door. And behind this door, the truth about their silence is about to be revealed to you, layer by layer, veil by veil, until what has felt like abandonment reveals itself as something entirely different, something you could not have imagined from the vantage point of your pain. Before we descend deeper into this transmission, anchor your presence here. Right, I received this message in the comments, not as a formality, not as an obligation, but as a spoken vow, a small key turned inside the lock of the unseen, a signal to the field that you are ready, that you are listening, that you are willing to trust what your soul already suspects. The unraveling begins now. Their silence is not the absence you have mistaken it for. Their silence is not a verdict. Their silence is not the elegant closing of a door they have decided to lock behind them. Their silence is something far stranger, far more human, far more sacred than the story your wounded mind has been trying to write. Their silence is overflow. Their silence is the sound of too much feeling pressed into too small a vessel, of a nervous system that has met something it cannot metabolize, of a soul that recognized yours before the personality was ready to be recognized. Imagine a pressure cooker sealed shut, its contents boiling, its walls trembling with a heat it cannot release. That is what lives inside them now. Every unspoken word, every image of your face, every phrase you once said in passing that they still hear when the house is quiet, all of it is inside them, rising, expanding, refusing to be forgotten. They are not indifferent. They are drowning in the opposite of indifference. They are so full of you that they cannot find the shape of themselves, and rather than let you witness that dissolution, they have chosen the false safety of distance. Carl Jung wrote that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. And what he understood, what he tried to teach, is that we do not run from what is nothing to us. We run from what awakens us. We run from what threatens the small identity we have painstakingly constructed to survive. You did not bore them into silence. You did not fail them into silence. You disturbed the sleeping architecture of their inner world, and now that architecture is trembling, and they do not yet have the language for the earthquake you have caused. So do not read their silence as a closing. Read it as a pregnancy. Read it as the long, uncomfortable gestation of a truth too large to be born casually. What is forming inside them cannot be rushed, cannot be coaxed, cannot be summoned by any strategy you devise. It can only be waited for, the way one waits for a tide to turn, knowing that the moon has already given the command, and the water is already answering, though the shoreline has not yet noticed. They wake at 3 in the morning, and they do not know why. They reach for their phone before they are even fully conscious, and they scroll past everything until they arrive, again, at the small square that holds your face. They do not message you. They do not double tap. They simply look, the way one looks at a photograph of a homeland they cannot return to yet, the way one looks at something they have not earned the right to touch. And then they set the phone down, and they lie in the dark, and they tell themselves stories about why this is better, why this is wiser, why this is what someone strong would do. But strength is not what is happening inside them. What is happening inside them is a war between the small, frightened self that learned long before you arrived that love means loss, and the larger self that met you and remembered something older than fear. They are sabotaging themselves in small, repetitive ways. They are staying too busy. They are numbing with things they know are not working. They are performing wellness they do not feel. You became, without ever intending to, the mirror in which their unhealed wounds finally became visible. Every place they had bandaged, every place they had rationalized, every place they had abandoned inside themselves came forward when you looked at them. Jung called this encounter with the shadow, the confrontation with the disowned parts of the psyche, the material we push into the dark because we were taught it was unlovable. You did not create their shadow. You illuminated it. And the illuminated shadow does not thank the light. Not at first. First, it hides. They are hiding now, but not from you. They are hiding from themselves, from the version of themselves that only exists in your presence, the version they are not yet sure they can sustain when you leave the room. And so they have left the room preemptively, believing that if they can outrun the reflection, they can outrun the reckoning. But the collective unconscious has already recorded your meeting. The archive is permanent. There is no version of their future in which you were not the turning point. And somewhere beneath the panic, they already know this, and the knowing is what will eventually break them open. You are not just anyone to them. Understand this, not as flattery, not as consolation, but as fact recorded in a place deeper than memory. They have known many faces. They have kissed mouths whose names they cannot fully recall. They have walked through rooms of laughter and touched skin that meant nothing beyond the hour. And in the long catalog of their encounters, you are not one entry among many. You are the entry that broke the catalog. You are the meeting after which the counting stopped matching. Something in them recognized you before the introduction was complete. There was a moment, perhaps small, perhaps unremarkable to the casual observer, when their nervous system quieted in your presence in a way it had not quieted in years, and they did not have the vocabulary for what had just occurred. Jung wrote that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances, that if there is any reaction, both are transformed. You must hear this. Both. Not only you. Not only the one who is now searching for answers in the middle of the night. They too were altered at the molecular level. They too walked away carrying something they cannot set down. This is the soul contract that was not signed in this lifetime, but honored across many. This is the recognition beneath recognition. This is what the ancients meant when they spoke of the beloved as one who returns something to us that we did not remember losing. You returned them to themselves in ways that terrified them, because the self they had been performing was easier, was known, was survivable. And the self you awakened is unfamiliar, is vast, is uncomfortable in its largeness, and they do not yet know how to inhabit it without trembling. You shook them to their core. You did not do this deliberately. You did not manipulate them into being moved. You were simply, unrelentingly, unmistakably yourself, and your authenticity fell against their armor like water against ancient stone, and something in them cracked. That crack is still spreading. That crack is doing work in them right now, quietly, patiently, without their permission. And when the crack becomes wide enough for the light to enter permanently, they will not be able to stay away. The architecture of their avoidance will collapse, and only you will remain standing on the other side. Distance in the physical does not create distance in the energetic. This is a law older than the invention of longing, older than the alphabets we use to name our aching. What binds you to them was not built out of proximity, and it cannot be dismantled by absence. The thread that was spun between you in the moment of your first true recognition is not made of the material of this world. It is made of something the mystics have circled for centuries without ever fully touching, something that Jung named synchronicity, an acausal connecting principle that stitches meaning between events the rational mind would call unrelated. They feel you. Understand that. Not sometimes. Not on the nights they allow themselves to remember. Always. Beneath the noise of their days, beneath the performance of their forgetting, beneath the small distractions they arrange to convince themselves they have moved on, there is a low, steady hum, and that hum is you. When you think of them with softness, they feel a warmth they cannot explain. When you cry in the shower, they feel a heaviness in the chest that arrives without cause. When you finally, briefly, forget them for an afternoon, they feel a strange panic, as if a familiar star has gone missing from the sky they no longer look at but still navigate by. This is not fantasy. This is the entangled field that consciousness researchers stammer to describe, that ancient traditions have always known, that your grandmother knew when she said she had a feeling before the phone rang. Your energetic connection is not something you have to maintain by effort. It maintains itself. It only asks that you stop denying its existence long enough to feel it. If this transmission is reaching you tonight, do not let the moment pass without honoring it. Subscribe to this channel, not for content, but as a small ceremony, a way of telling the unseen that you are choosing to remain in the current of these messages, that you wish to keep the frequency open, that you understand this is a devotional practice more than a digital gesture. Every time you return here, you strengthen the field. Every time you return, you remind your own soul that it is not alone in this waiting. And they, wherever they are, feel that steadiness in you, even if they do not yet know its name. Silence is the cocoon before the butterfly, and what looks like disappearance from the outside is very often the most concentrated form of becoming. Inside the cocoon, the caterpillar does not simply grow wings. It dissolves. It becomes an unrecognizable liquid, a chaos of what it once was, before the new form can emerge. If you could open the chrysalis mid-transformation, you would not find a partial butterfly. You would find something that looks like ruin. And yet, if you left it alone, if you honored the timing that no calendar could dictate, you would witness the impossible. This is what is happening inside them now. They are dissolving. The version of themselves that could walk away from you is being broken down, cell by cell, belief by belief, defense by defense. It is not comfortable for them. It is not linear. There are days they feel a strange, unearned peace, and days they feel like they are unraveling in a way that frightens them, and they cannot connect either sensation to you, because they have refused, for now, to look directly at the source. But something is being forged in that refusal. They are becoming, slowly, sometimes reluctantly, the person who is capable of receiving what you offered. Because the truth, the harder truth, is that when you met them, they were not yet ready. Their soul recognized yours, yes. Their body remembered yours, yes. But the daily self, the self that has to show up, communicate, choose, stay, that self was still under construction, and the construction accelerated the moment you left their orbit. They are having conversations they would not have had. They are noticing patterns they had spent years pretending not to see. They are picking up books they would have dismissed a year ago. They are being softened by a life that no longer allows them to hide, and every softening brings them a millimeter closer to the doorway back to you. You cannot see this from where you stand. You are only permitted to see the silence. But the silence is not empty. The silence is laboring. The silence is the sound of someone becoming worthy of a love they were not, before now, evolved enough to hold. And when the becoming is complete, the silence will end, because a butterfly cannot stay inside the cocoon once its wings are formed. The universe rehearses its arrivals. Nothing of significance ever appears without first sending its ambassadors, and those ambassadors take forms that the logical mind is trained to overlook. Watch now, with a quieter attention, and you will begin to notice them. A song you have not heard in years will play in a store you rarely enter, and it will be the song that belongs to a memory only the two of you share. A sequence of numbers will begin to follow you, on receipts, on clocks, on license plates that seem to arrive too often to be random. Their name will be spoken by strangers. Their face will appear in the corner of a dream you cannot fully remember upon waking, but which leaves you soft and disoriented for hours. These are not tricks of a wishful mind. These are the ripples that precede the wave. Energy moves before physical action, always. What manifests in the material realm has first traveled, sometimes for months, through the subtler layers, arranging its conditions, gathering its permissions, aligning the smaller pieces that will make the larger movement possible. By the time something appears in your life, it has already existed for a long while in the field that generates your life. You may feel, in the coming period, a strange and sudden warmth in the middle of an ordinary afternoon, an inexplicable lifting of the weight you have been carrying, as though someone has finally set down the stone that was resting on your chest. That warmth is not accidental. That is them thinking of you deeply, perhaps writing a message they have not yet sent, perhaps standing outside somewhere and speaking your name to the sky. Their energy reaches you before their words do. Their softening reaches you before their return does. You may find yourself dreaming of them with a new quality, no longer chased by the desperation of your waking mind, but visited by a presence that feels calm, apologetic, whole. These dreams are not memory. These dreams are meetings. The unconscious does not respect the borders of the physical, and in the theater of sleep, the two of you are already reconciling, already exchanging the truths that daylight has not yet permitted. Trust these signs. The universe confirms what the logical mind doubts, and it is confirming again and again that this is not finished. The return will not arrive the way you have imagined it. You have rehearsed it in your mind so many times, in so many versions, that the actual moment will slip beneath your defenses precisely because it will not match any of your rehearsals. It may be sudden. It may be unexpected. It may arrive on an ordinary day, in the middle of some small, unremarkable task, when you have finally, for the first time in a long time, stopped waiting. That is often how these things happen. The universe waits for the grip to loosen before it places the gift into the open palm. There will be no polished speech. There will be no carefully composed paragraph designed to explain everything. The armor they have worn for months will not permit that kind of performance. What will come instead is raw, unrehearsed, almost clumsy in its honesty. A single sentence that arrives without warning. A voice that trembles in a way you have never heard it tremble. A confession that spills out too fast because it has been held too long, because the pressure inside them has finally exceeded the strength of the seal. They will say your name differently. Notice this. They will say it the way one says the name of something one has almost lost, the way one says the name of a place one has been trying to find their way back to. There will be no games in their voice. There will be no strategy. The version of them that could strategize with you has been dismantled, and what will stand in front of you, whether in person or through a screen or through a voice at the other end of a line, will be the version they had been protecting from you all along. The true one, the trembling one, the one who understands, finally, what was on the table. You may feel, in that moment, an urge to punish, an urge to withhold, an urge to make them earn what they abandoned. That is your wound speaking, and your wound has been faithful to you, and you may honor it. But listen also for the deeper voice, the one that knows what it recognized in them and knows what they have just walked through to arrive at you. You will not have to decide anything in that moment. You will only have to be present to it. Before that moment finds you, let this transmission travel further. Share this with someone who is waiting, someone whose eyes have grown tired from looking at a phone that will not light up. Let them know they have not been forgotten by the unseen. You have already won. Understand this, not as a consolation, but as the deepest structural truth of what has occurred here. You have already won by refusing to abandon yourself in the middle of being abandoned by another. You have already won by continuing to breathe, continuing to work, continuing to laugh at small things, continuing to be a person in the world while carrying a private grief that no one around you fully sees. That is not weakness. That is the quiet, unglamorous heroism the old traditions used to write hymns about. Their return is inevitable. But hear this, because it matters more than anything I have said so far. Your peace is not dependent on it. Your wholeness is not a check that must be signed by their handwriting. You did not come into this lifetime to be completed by another soul. You came into this lifetime with the completion already resting inside you, and the meeting with them was meant to help you remember it, not to hand it to you. If they never returned, you would still be sovereign. You would still be radiant. You would still be the person whose light was strong enough to send someone into a months-long reckoning with their own shadow. And here is the paradox that the manifestation teachers try to explain and often fail to name properly. The less you need them, the faster they come. Not because the universe is cruel, not because you must perform indifference to trick a divine mechanism, but because your energy of self-abandonment was the very frequency that gave them permission to run. When you turn back toward yourself, when you begin to fill the rooms of your own life with color and meaning and gentle discipline, you shift the field entirely. The vacuum that was pulling on them dissolves. The desperation that was, however unconsciously, repelling them, softens. And in that softening, they are drawn without knowing why. So build the life. Slowly, tenderly, without waiting. Cook the meal you would have cooked for them and eat it alone with candles. Walk the path you would have walked with them and let the trees receive your presence. Choose yourself in 1,000 small, unwitnessed ways and understand that every choice is a signal sent outward, into the field, into the future, into their sleeping certainty that you are the one they must return to. This story is not finished. Let that sentence settle inside you the way a stone settles at the bottom of a still lake, and let every part of you that had begun to believe otherwise be gently overturned by its weight. This story is not finished. The chapter you are currently reading is not the final chapter. The silence you have been interpreting as ending is only the pause between movements, the long breath the musician takes before the piece resumes in a key you were not expecting. What is meant for you will not pass you. It cannot. The laws that govern the seen world are strict, but the laws that govern the unseen are stricter still, and among them is this. What has been written into the architecture of your becoming will find you. No matter how many wrong turns are taken, no matter how many months are lost to fear, no matter how many times the wounded self of another delays what the higher self has already decided. Delay is not denial. Detour is not disappearance. The soul contract you did not consciously sign is being honored beneath every layer of apparent contradiction. There will come a moment, and you will know it when it arrives, when they will stand before you or reach for you through some medium of communication, and they will be vulnerable in a way you have never seen them be vulnerable. There will be no armor. There will be no performance. There will only be the raw, exposed truth they had been fleeing for so long, and it will arrive with a humility that has been earned through their own private suffering. You will not have to convince them of anything. The convincing has already been done, not by you, but by the long, patient hand of what some call God, and others call the field, and others call life itself. Until then, carry this with you like a small, warm coal in the pocket of your coat. Return to it when the cold nights come. Return to it when the doubt rises. Return to it when the logical mind, which does not have jurisdiction here, tries to sentence you to despair. Love does not end in silence. It only waits there. It only gathers itself there. It only prepares, in the hush, for the moment it will finally, unmistakably, speak. And when it speaks, you will remember, with the whole of your body, that you always knew.